now it's almost as if I have to repeat everything I just said. I'm going to give the summary. We needed a letter from the IRS before we could go to the PBGC, and the letter from the IRS had to be favorable. Approximately 3 to 4 weeks ago, we received a favorable letter from the IRS saying that the plan does qualify under ERISA and therefore is qualified for PBGC coverage. We sent that letter to the PBGC. The IRS did not, so we sent it off to them. And now the process of PBGC's determination as to, one, whether or not the plan is a plan that they would cover, is underway. And if it is a plan that they would cover, at what percentage would they cover the plan? 20%, 30%, 40%, so on. As I have told you all along, we've been in constant communication with the PBGC since almost the beginning of this case, letting them know everything that we've been doing. And the discussions thus far have been positive, and they continue to be positive. Obviously, the PBGC is not going to give any official determination until they actually make a determination. But unofficially, and this is not only based on the communications, kind of, I'll call it the flavor of the communications with the PBGC, but also with Jeff Cohen, who is my special counsel down in Washington, D.C. His experience with the PBGC, he's their former general counsel. He said once this process begins with the PBGC, it is usually somewhere in the range of 45 to 60 days before they make a determination as to coverage. And then if they do determine that coverage is appropriate, then they issue a letter of transition at that time, which would be anywhere from 30 to 60 days of transitioning from me over to the PBGC. Again, those are estimates. Those aren't hard dates. Those aren't anything that is statutorily required, and it's nothing that the PBGC has affirmatively stated, but that is typically the timeframes we're looking at. So based on those timeframes, if those timeframes apply, we would be getting a letter from the PBGC sometime the end of September, beginning of October, indicating coverage and a percentage of coverage. And then at that time, they would also be advising me of the time frame in which they want me to start transitioning the plan over to them so that they can take over. That process is underway. We don't have anything formal, but just as recently as about an hour and a half ago, I had a phone call regarding several pieces of information that the PBGC was looking for from us and coordinating getting that information over to them. So it is an active and constant process with the PBGC. I've probably had communications with Washington, D.C. Almost I'd say maybe on an every other day basis since they got that letter from the IRS. So that's moving. I remain as optimistic as I have been. And my optimism is that the PBGC will take over the plan and they will take it over at 100%. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I believe will happen. And that's a good segue into the letter that I posted, as well as the media coverage that was recently posted. This coverage by the PBGC, if the PBGC says that they are not covering this plan, or they say that they're covering the plan, but not at 100%. And at 100% means there's a statutory limit that the PBGC must cover up to. And they can cover anywhere from 100% of that limit to something less than that limit. I can tell everybody on this call that based on my review of the plan over the past 7 years, there are, I believe it is 2 pension holders who fall slightly above that statutory limit. And by slightly, I mean within $5,000. So what that means is that for everybody but those 2 people, all of you but those 2 people would receive 100% of your pension under the PBGC. And the 2 that fall slightly outside of that would receive up to 100% of the limit, which would give them a small $4,000 haircut or something like that. So that is, as you recall, back in August of 2017, when the plan was put into receivership and they were seeking cuts of 50 or 60% of your pensions. I did not do that. And my job, as the court directed me, was to protect your pensions and to ultimately do what was necessary to get you 100% of the money that you worked your lives to earn through your pension. The PBGC coverage at 100% will do that. Under the settlement with the diocese, if the PBGC either does not cover the plan at all or covers it for a percentage less than 100%, then the settlement with the diocese gets thrown into the trash and we continue to litigate with the diocese.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So I know the report was that the diocese settled for pennies on the dollar and that the plan is tenuous at this point. The settlement, quite frankly, whether the diocese settled with us for 2.5 million or 25 million or 125 million, that would not get 100% to you as pension holders. The PBGC was the only way to get 100% to you as pension holders. And quite frankly, that litigation needed to happen because the PBGC has unofficially indicated that they don't have a desire to inherit litigation. So we had to go through the litigation. We had to see what we could do through the litigation, what that could realize. And I understand the news story paints the diocesan settlement in a very poor light. But keep in mind, the diocesan settlement, if it goes through, it means your pensions are protected 100%. If the diocesan settlement fails, it's because the PBGC did not cover it 100%. And then we go back to court and we start suing the diocese the way we had before the settlement. Okay. So my hope, putting aside anybody's desire to get a pound of flesh from any of the parties that we sued back in June of 2018, my hope and my goal from day one was to make sure that each one of you got the maximum that you could for your pension, which is 100%. And I believe that is, I'm hopeful that that is going to be the result that we hear from the PBGC within the next 60 days. If the timeframes work out the way they typically work out, and of course, the St. Joe's pension plan and this receivership are unique, so there may be a reason why it doesn't work exactly that way in terms of timing. But if we work on the high end of the time range, 60 days until they send a letter and then 60 days for transition, your plan will be in the hands of the PBGC with 100% coverage before the end of this year. So I believe, I hope you agree with me that that is good news. There is finally what appears to be a light at the end of the tunnel. Like I said, if the PBGC does not cover the plan or does not cover the plan at 100%, then we will continue to manage the plan and then we will we'll re-engage, I guess I'll say, our efforts in litigation with the remaining defendants, which is the bishop and the diocese. So with that, I will open up the floor to any questions that anybody may have. And I put everybody on mute. So if you want to talk, either take yourself off of mute or raise your hand or something like that, and I can take you off mute. Any questions at all? Julie, are you seeing anybody? Oh, Marilyn, I see Marilyn. Marilyn, I don't, can I say, it would not have been, I would have felt bad.
I know.
Without at least one, but certainly without you at least speaking. I don't know what you're going to say, but at least speaking.
Oh, you'd be surprised what I'm gonna know. I'm hearing I think for the first time, that there's a possibility that PBGC may not cover 100%. I
Well,
was under the impression that they would, if they chose to cover, they would cover 100%.
well, there may be some nuances to why you thought that. So we elected to be covered under ERISA. I made the election. Julie, what was that? 2019? Did I make that election?
It was April of 2019.
Yeah, April of 2019. So what that meant in April of 2019
What happened to her? She's
is
ugly as sin.
instead of waiting for the IRS to determine whether or not this was a plan that qualified under ERISA, I made that election in 2019. When we made that election, the PBGC has what's called a 5-year phase-in. So you can't make the election on April of 19 and then go seek coverage on May of 19 at 100%. They basically say, okay, you elect to be covered by ERISA. We're going to phase you in over the next 5 years. And it doesn't work exactly this way, but in year one, we'll cover you up to 20% if you make a claim in year one. In year two, it goes up to 40. In year three, 60, up to 5 years in which it's 100%. Once you get to 100%, once you get to that 5-year phase-in point, which we got into in April of this year, then the PBGC can cover you up to 100%. There's no obstacle to 100% coverage, but they could still make a determination that they're not going to cover up to 100% for some reason that they make a determination, which I do believe there is a process by which you can appeal any decision like that or whatnot. So the 5-year phase-in, which was completed by April of 2024 this year, allowed this plan to seek coverage from the PBGC, subject to that IRS letter that we just got, at a level of up to 100%. When we entered into the settlement with the diocese, and the PBGC is aware of that settlement, we said the settlement only happens if the PBGC covers up to 100%. So as far as we are concerned, coverage at less than 100% is not a win. We need 100% coverage, or we're just going to keep fighting our fight.
Okay.
PBGC is aware of it. So I don't have any official word from the PBGC, so I certainly cannot state with clarity for you or anybody else that the PBGC will cover up to 100%, but I remain optimistic based on what I know they know and based on the communications that we have had with them, that they are looking at this plan as a plan for coverage at the 100% level. Okay.
You don't think that because of the uniqueness of this situation, that they may not want to do that?
I think because of the uniqueness of the situation actually helps us that they will. Keep in mind that the majority of plans that the PBGC sees are managed by independent parties that may or may not have complied with their obligations under ERISA, and that non-compliance was intentional, or for some reason that was not justified. This plan, through this entire process, the phase-in and everything, has been under the guidance of the court through me as the receiver. And so the PBGC is looking at the group that's been running this plan, which is the Rhode Island Superior Court. And that is favorable because they know that that process has been transparent, and that to the extent things were done, they were done the right way because a court authorized it, directed it, ratified it, whatever the case may be. So this plan is unique, but I think the uniqueness of what happened here actually lends to the potential for a more favorable determination than if this were St. Joe's Hospital kind of going to the PBGC on its own and saying, well, we didn't make any contributions and we didn't do this, that, or the other thing, but now cover us. We didn't do what we were supposed to do, but now you've got to come in and do it. We've come in and we've collected over $50 million in settlements with the lawsuit, with the different lawsuits. We've continued to actively manage the investments of the plan in a way that's prudent, not aggressive, but certainly not liquidating it all to cash and just letting it all spend down. And so the actions we've taken, all under court supervision, I think are a favorable view for the PBGC. That's one of the unique things we do.
Thank you. And thank you and Max and the other attorneys for doing the wonderful job that you've done. We really, I'm sure I speak for all of us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I want you to know, I appreciate everybody's here, their interest. I mean, obviously this is your lives. You worked for this. So certainly you're interested, but your support, because without your support, our efforts would not have been as successful. Every time, I know it was pre-COVID that people were coming to court and things like that, that's when those hearings were happening. But each time that was noticed by the judge and it was noticed by the defendants who were at that time were all involved in this case. And that helped immensely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I think you can take yourself off mute if you want to. Well, I didn't get a question. I got somebody who just dropped off. So apparently, doesn't sound like there are any other questions. Obviously, if you have a question, if you think of it after this, you can certainly email, Julie or I, or both of us. Hold on a second. I got a few chats here. Thank you. Okay. No, I thought there might have been a question in the chat room. You can email Julie or I. If you have any questions with benefits, email Julie and she'll get you in touch with the right person down at GRS. To the extent you're looking for how to file the application or a status of an application or something like that. Oh, wait a second. Carol has a question. Go ahead, Carol.
Hi, Stephen. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. This looks like very good news to me. I have a question. We're getting a new bishop in the diocese. We don't know who yet, apparently. Will that have any impact on the future of our church?
No. No, it will not. The settlement has been signed. At the time it was signed by a person with authority to sign on behalf of the bishop and the diocese. It has been approved by both courts, both the Rhode Island Superior Court and the federal court, and it's going through. So if the PBGC coverage comes in at 100%, that settlement is done. If the PBGC coverage does not come in, then we re-engage in our litigation efforts. So that is, for all intents and purposes, subject only to the PBGC. That settlement is carved in stone right now.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for helping us in our dire straits.
Our pleasure. I got to tell you, this is one of the few times that as a lawyer, you get to do something that really helps people. And as Julie knows, in the business area of which we do, it's, you don't usually get a case like this where you get good people. I look at you all as my clients in a way, and it's good people who you can actually make a difference for. So
I don't know whether anyone has seen, there was a big article in Go Local Prov regarding Max Wistow and his new engagement with the Washington Bridge debacle. And they went into detail about our pension woes and how that Max was so instrumental and that you were mentioned in it as well.
yes.
Yeah, it was a very favorable for us. So,
yeah, and there were just some things in there. I think the article that you're talking about is the one that I wanted to respond to because it seemed, my reading of it seemed to make an indication that the plan was in trouble and that there was still like kind of like hanging by a string.
it
And
did say it wasn't resolved.
yeah. And so I wanted, especially, I told you guys that I would be updating you regularly. We've got some big news with that IRS letter. I don't want to,
Yeah, that's wonderful.
minimize the importance of that letter.
Excellent.
And that letter was, I want to, although he's not on, I want to thank Jeff Cohen, as well as his partner, Alan Tashunsky, who are our special counsel down in Washington, DC. Because our initial verbal indication from the IRS was that they were not going to give a favorable letter. And that got us to mobilize with Alan and Jeff in particular. Alan, who I believe is former general counsel to the IRS. And within a few weeks, it went from, I don't think we can issue you a favorable determination letter to here is your favorable determination letter. So I don't want to underscore the efforts of people like Alan and Jeff as well to make this happen for this plan and for all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Anybody else?
Stephen, there's a question in the chat
Okay.
section asking if the election could affect the PBGC determination.
Are we, Michelle, I'm assuming you're meaning the election, the presidential election? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. While certainly the change of administration could result in the change of heads of departments, with the timeframes that we have here,
would-
we are expecting, or we
To the-
should expect a letter from the PBGC before the election in November. Like I said, the timeframe on that is September, October. And if we get that election, if we get that letter before the election, then certainly the change of administration won't change anything. In addition, change of administration won't happen until obviously January of 2025. And then any new administration would have to then identify and go through an appointment process for a PBGC head. We will be done with this well before then. So while I can't say it has zero impact, based on the timing, it does not, I don't anticipate it having any impact on this at all. Wayne asked, why was the IRS involved? So Wayne, the IRS was involved because in order for a plan to be covered by the PBGC, then the plan needs to qualify as a qualified plan under the Internal Revenue Code. That's what ERISA requires. So in order to determine whether or not the plan is a qualified plan under ERISA, the IRS has to make a determination as to whether or not they are qualified. So IRS makes the determination as to whether a plan's qualified under ERISA, and then PBGC, if they are, PBGC then makes a determination as to what level of coverage they would be entitled to. So that's why we had always needed that letter from the IRS. And I can indicate to everybody that part of the reason why the IRS was at first hesitant is the IRS has a policy where if the plan in question has already received a determination letter, then they won't issue another one. This plan did receive a determination letter back, I think it was 2013 or 14 from the IRS. At that time, it was not an ERISA plan. And we went back to the IRS and basically stated, one, we're not necessarily asking for it. The PBGC needs it. They're asking for it. And two, the plan as it existed the last time you gave a letter is completely different than the plan that exists today. And that the receiver being in place changes the circumstances. So it's not really the same plan that you gave a determination letter on before. It's different. It's under a receiver who's a new person administering it, and they made the election under ERISA. And those arguments were persuasive, obviously, because that resulted in the IRS re-looking at it and then ultimately issuing the letter that they issued to us about, like I said, 3 to 4 weeks ago. All right. Marilyn, you wanna,
I'm back again.
okay,
Let's say PBGC does not fund us at 100%. You just said that we're going back to the lawsuit with the diocese if that happens. So
Yes.
let's say they fund us at 80%.
Yep.
So that means the amount that we receive will be cut at that point?
You mean in terms of what the PBGC would be paying out for benefits?
Correct.
Um, without overstepping my understanding of it. So I believe once PBGC takes over, if they say we will take over the plan and we will cover it at 80%, then that's the benefits would start to be calculated at that percentage. Which is why we have said from the beginning, it's either 100% or it's nothing as far as we're concerned. So
Say that, so are you saying that it's either 100% or nothing, so we won't accept PBGC if it's not 100%?
I'm saying that if PBGC comes in and says we're gonna cover it at less than 100%, one, we're gonna fight that. And two, we are gonna continue with the litigation, which I know the PBGC does not want to inherit. So the PBGC would likely not start taking over the plan if there was litigation pending. Because taking over the plan means also taking over that litigation.
Okay,
So, and like I said, obviously, Marilyn, I have to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. But again, I'll say it again, and I can't say it definitively because I don't have word from the PBGC, but there's nothing that has happened in any of the discussions with me or with special counsel that would lead us to believe that they are looking at this plan for coverage at a level less than 100%. All right, so, and I say that because even while we were waiting for the letter from the IRS, we were in discussions with the PBGC, kind of getting ready for once we did get the letter from the IRS. So even the PBGC at that point was acting in a way which indicated that they were expecting not only to get a letter from the IRS, but to get a favorable one. So we had already kind of started that process along with the IRS. That's why I have a high level of confidence that any scenario other than 100% is a very unlikely scenario.
but let's say worst case scenario it is.
Yeah.
If they cut us to whatever percentage, that means our pension would be cut, correct?
That means the benefits payments would be cut.
Okay, what about the money that that we still have, the 47 million that we still have?
So when the
What happens to that?
right, so when the PBGC takes over, remember I talked about that they'd send me a letter saying you got to start transitioning the plan over to us, Mr. Receiver. That transition would be giving them control of the cash. They would continue to work with Bank of America on benefits. They'd continue to work with Mercer on investments. And I would transition the money and the contracts, meaning the contract for benefits management as well as investment management, over to the PBGC. And then they would have control of the money and control over the parties who are investing and providing benefits. So I would be out of it. If that happened, once that transition happens, I am no longer involved with the day-to-day management administration of the plan.
I guess what I'm trying to understand is we've got $47 million left in this pension. And they're funding us at 80%. Will the money from the 47 million then fund everybody at 100% until that money runs out?
No, I will confirm this answer, but I believe the answer to that is no. What that means is that this plan, and these are just round numbers, these aren't actual numbers. This plan needs, in order to fund at 100%, it needs 200 million. So the PBGC would take the 47 million, and then their funds would supplement the remaining
Okay,
153 million. If they did it at 80%, then that would be 160 million. They'd take the 47 million, and then they'd say, okay, now we're going to supplement the 123 million dollars that needs to be supplemented to get up to 80%. So they would be taking the money that the plan currently has to offset against what they have to come out of pocket for in terms of getting up to that percentage. And I will tell you that I know in the beginning we talked about a shortfall of this plan at 125, 130 million. As the plan, those numbers change every few months, every year. 120, 130 million is not the number today. If we got $120 million, it still would not be 100% for this plan. We'd have to be somewhere closer to the $200 million range at this point. So that's why I say whether we settle with the diocese for 2.5 or 125 million, it's still our best option is the PBGC at 100%. That's the only way all of you, except for two,
mhm.
get 100% of the pensions that you work for.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? And Marilyn, I will confirm what I told you, and I will post something to the website to the extent that the answer is different or just confirming what the answer is on that. Any other questions? All right. Hearing none, obviously, if anything happens between now, Julie, what do we usually do? 5 or 6 weeks on this?
Usually around 6.
Okay, so 6 puts us almost right at the time where I'm expecting under a typical time frame to get a response from the PBGC, so that may work out perfectly. I will tell you that if the discussions with the PBGC, if I have a more definitive time frame, then I will schedule the next meeting in accordance with that because I want to be able to tell you the news. I don't want to have a meeting on Monday and then get the letter on Tuesday or Wednesday and then have to schedule something else. So we'll plan on something at the end of September. But understand that may be sooner or later, depending on how our discussions with the PBGC go. All right. Again, thank you everybody for spending the time and listening to me. Thank you for your patience and your support. And I will see you. I hope everybody has a enjoyable remainder of the summer. And I will see you guys in the early fall, if not sooner. Thank you, everybody. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.